Hi, everybody. This is Samantha from the Law Offices of Samantha Wolfe, and I'm here today for our monthly virtual seminar for the month of August. And what we decided to do through the summer is do a little bit of shorter videos with topics that clients frequently ask so that we could answer them in short little tidbits. Maybe it's easier to access that way. You can check us out on our YouTube channel. You can also reach us at 717-655-2676. Today, what I want to talk about is the valuation of real estate. That is a frequently asked question that we get with clients, and it's usually asked in two contexts. So the first is that I might have a client that wants to know if they're the executor and they're administering an estate when someone has passed away and there's real estate involved. They may ask the question of how do we value the real estate? And the first inclination is always for the client or the executor to ask about getting it appraised. And in Pennsylvania, there are two ways that the Department of Revenue accepts a valuation for real estate. So the first is that you can get an appraisal. You can have the estate pay for the cost of the appraisal, and you can obtain an appraisal of the real estate. The benefit of doing an appraisal is that's usually the most accurate way to value the real estate. And if you're planning to sell it or sell it down the line, the benefit of getting it appraised is you're capturing the most accurate way to value the real estate. That's important because whatever value you include on the Pennsylvania inheritance tax return establishes your basis for income tax purposes. So, for example, if we have Jane Doe who passed away and her son John is the executor, and John gets an appraisal, discloses the value on the Pennsylvania inheritance tax return, pays the Pennsylvania inheritance tax, then what he's done is he's established the basis as of mom's date of death, and we're saying that it's the appraised value. So if John turns around and sells that property for the fair market value, i.e. the appraised value, there's going to be no capital gains that he has to pay because you only pay capital gains on the difference between the sale price of the real estate and the basis in the asset. When someone passes away in Pennsylvania, if it's included in their estate and you're paying inheritance tax, then you do receive a stepped up basis. That basis is equal to the fair market value when the person died. And if you're using an appraisal, that's usually the closest figure you can get to what you would actually sell it for. So that's why in some cases our clients choose to get real estate appraised. But there is a second way that you can value the real estate when someone passes away, and that would be using the tax assessed value and multiplying it by the county's common level ratio factor. And the common level ratio factor is issued every July 1st. This ratio changes. So for example, in 2023, Franklin County's common level ratio factor was 11.63. So if someone wanted to know the value, the fair market value of real estate in 2023, they could take the tax assessed value that they find on their tax card and they could multiply it by 11.63 and get what the Department of Revenue says is the fair market value of the real estate. Now, July 1st of 2024, the value for all counties did change. Franklin County, it went from 11.63, it increased to 12.20. So you use the common level ratio factor that is in effect in the year in which the person passed away. So for example, if I were to calculate the value of someone who passed away July 31st, I would take the tax assessed value and multiply it by 12.20, and that would give me a fair market value. Now, I pulled an example from a tax assessment card, and in this particular property, the assessed value of the real estate is $29,250. And I pulled that from the tax card that I was able to obtain on Franklin County's GIS map. So anybody who types Franklin County, Pennsylvania GIS map into their website search engine they'll come upon a link that actually allows you to search for real estate by address. And then you can look up the tax card. When you look up the tax card, it gives you what the assessed value of buildings, land, and the total amount. So in this example, I'm using the total amount, which is $29,250. If I multiply that by Franklin County's common level ratio factor, because this real estate is located in Franklin County, the ratio factor is 12.20. That would tell me that the fair market value of this property is $356,850. Now, the common level ratio factor is dependent on the county. So, for example, Franklin County adjusts their factor as well as Adams County, Fulton County, or any other county across Pennsylvania. And the Department of Revenue releases that common level ratio factor July 1st of every year. So you can jump on the Department of Revenue's website and get not only the current common level ratio factor, but you can also find a link to the historical common level ratio factors for every county. So if you're trying to calculate what a tax would be for a year prior to 2024, you can certainly do that by looking at the historical values. So in this case, if we disclosed the $356,850 on the Pennsylvania inheritance tax return, we would pay tax on that fair market value. So we did not pay for an appraisal. We did not get it appraised. Pennsylvania says we can use the tax assessed times the common level ratio factor. The reason that you would use this value is if you do not want to pay for an appraisal, you don't want to have that expense, or sometimes we have clients who aren't planning to sell the real estate, they're going to keep it, and so it doesn't pay to get an appraisal if they're not going to be selling the property. Now, the other way that you can value real estate is if you are selling it in the estate, you can put what the sale price is or what you sell the property for, and you can pay inheritance tax on that value, and then you do get a stepped up basis equal to the value you disclosed on the Pennsylvania inheritance tax return. So when it comes to Pennsylvania inheritance tax, just remember that there are two different valuations that you can use. You can use the tax assessed times the common level ratio factor, or you can get an appraisal. And again, you would use those two methods if you aren't planning to sell it to a third party and you don't already have a sale price or a listing price. That's when you would use either the common level ratio or you would use the appraised value. The other time that we have clients ask about valuation is when it comes to nursing home purposes. The reason why they need to know the value for that would be maybe they're going to sell it. So I often run into a situation where, especially with farming families, mom or dad is going into a nursing home and we want to try to protect any real estate that they own. And so in that case, we might have the child or the individual who is continuing to farm, we might have them purchase that real estate. And in Pennsylvania, they have to purchase it for the fair market value. Otherwise, it can be considered a gift, which makes you ineligible for Medicaid benefits based on the amount of the gift. So we often get clients who ask, well, how much do I have to sell the property for, and do I have to pay to get it appraised? And again, Pennsylvania does allow you to use the tax assessed times the common level ratio factor to determine the fair market value for the sale of real estate. So in the example that I used with a property that's assessed at the $29,250, if I had a child who was going to purchase that, and maybe they wanted to purchase it using an installment sale, so they want to stretch out the payments over a period of years, I would use the actual sale price and I would take the $29,250, multiply it by the common level ratio factor for that county in the year in which the sale is going to occur, and I would get the value of $356,850. So as long as the buyer purchased the property for at least that amount, then it is not available for a nursing home if somebody would need nursing home care. Now, again, that value or that purchase price does not have to be paid in a lump sum. You can do it using an installment sale, so it's paid over a period of years. So what we're trying to do here is just figure out what value do you use. Now you can get it appraised, like we talked about it for the inheritance tax purposes. You can also do that for nursing home purposes, but using the tax assessed times the common level ratio factor is another method that allows you to evaluate the real estate. The benefit with that method is that you don't have to pay for an appraisal. Now, the only time that I tell clients that you might not want to use that value would be if that value is actually more than you would sell the property for. So, for example, if the $356,850 is actually higher than what they would be able to sell it for, then maybe an appraisal would be better, because then you have documentation to prove why you use the lower value. And in some counties in Pennsylvania, because the common level ratio factor changes based on the county, there are some counties that have a lower common level ratio factor. So for example, if you were to have real estate located in Lycoming County, their common level ratio factor is only 2.04. So if they took their tax assessed value and multiplied it by 2.04, that value might actually be less than what it would appraise for or what it would actually sell on the open market. And in that case, the client is going to want to use the tax assessed times the common level ratio factor, because it means that whoever's buying it doesn't have to expend as much money when they're doing that, and it's still protected against long-term care costs. So I wanted to explain that. In Franklin County, the common level ratio factor does tend to be higher than other counties. That common level ratio factor is designed to adjust the tax assessed value based on the fact that real estate is not reassessed or hasn't been reassessed in a period of time. So that common level ratio factor is designed to adjust the tax assessed value since we haven't had a reassessment in our county. Other counties across Pennsylvania may have been reassessed more recently, so therefore their common level ratio factor may be lower. Or it could just be the fair market value of that real estate based on the county isn't as much as Franklin County, solely based on the location of the real estate. So I would always encourage clients to consider the appraised value versus the tax assessed value times the common level ratio factor, just to determine the best value based on inheritance tax purposes or based on nursing home purposes. Again, this factor does change every July 1st, so you want to make sure you're checking in to see what the common level ratio factor is from July 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025. We saw the change from 11.63 to 12.20 between 2023 and 2024. That change does happen July 1st. So I just wanted to take some time to explain that difference. If anybody has any questions about valuations for Pennsylvania inheritance tax purposes or evaluations for nursing home purposes and how best to determine that value, you're always welcome to call our office at 717-655-2676, and we'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Check out our virtual seminar for next month, and you're always welcome to see our past videos and seminars. If you check out our YouTube channel, you're welcome to do that as well. Thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.